hello. Every time I say that, I start looking at you thinking I should say hello. Is it
me you're looking for?
Why
don't you say hi?
I don't know.
And
I just say
wonder
hello
what
every
you
time.
do. Are you somewhere feeling lonely?
Or
are you
somewhere feeling blue? Now,
Yeah.
that's how we start a Monday.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, okay. Here we are. Back again.
Back.
I'm going to try that one more time, but I'm going to keep that because I like that. Let's try it again. Okay, ready? In 3. Well, hello and welcome back to See Her Love, where we hang out on a Monday and do what we love to do and do what we love to do best, and that's talk about life, love, and the things that matter to us.
Yeah.
And who better to do that with than my wonderful co-hosts right here, Joanne and Cheryl. And I was going to start singing The Lady in Red. The Lady in Red. And that's what I love about Mondays.
Name the artist for 20
Chris
points.
DeBerg.
High five.
Boom.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jen. I'm like, we're over our special guest. We're like, boom.
It's all good.
Yes.
I would not have known that. That's worth a bump.
We love Mondays because Mondays just help to like kick us off for the week, but also we've been hearing from our viewers that we give them a little spark, a little encouragement. So Mondays are always great, and it's even greater today because we have a fabulous woman with us, Jennifer Lawrence, which I have to say, having Jennifer Lawrence as a name like the actress is amazing.
It is amazing. It's, you know what, I get great restaurant reservations, especially when she's in town. And
I love that.
just recently my highlights got kind of messed up. And so I called to make this emergency appointment with a new salon, and she was filming. And so they got their artistic director involved. But then I come in and they're like really disappointed. I think I'm used to seeing people's faces just be really disappointed all the time.
I'm Jennifer Lawrence, and then the Hunger Games song goes on, you know, that
You should just
they're like,
practice your archery
I
skills.
should. You know what? As like a suburban mom, that's a really good skill to have. You know?
That would come in handy.
Especially when the kids are out of line.
Yeah, they're messing around and boom.
And then the Hunger Games theme goes every time you do something.
Choose.
Yeah, do it. Aside from being, you know, I would say maybe better than Jennifer Lawrence. Yeah. Jen is a writer, a pioneering mommy blogger, which I can't wait to talk to you about. She's also a blogger for Huffington Post, 1010 Park Place. She's an author, a story coach, and before all of that, all the writing, she worked in investment banking and management consulting.
Nice.
And she has gone through a lot. And, you know, Jen, you have all of these things, but, you know, you've gone through a lot of trauma and hard stuff in your life. And so today you're with us to really encourage us and our viewers and listeners through some suffering that they may have been experiencing, our experience, as you have throughout your life journey as well. So on that note, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us about let's start, because you clearly are a storyteller. You write, you coach about story. What is it about story? What is it about sort of the written word of story that attracts you and you find so powerful?
For me, storytelling has always been just this really honest medium, because I think it's sometimes hard to have a conversation with somebody about things that are hard. Whereas when you're writing about it, there's a little bit of distance, and so people can tend to tackle some things that maybe they wouldn't bring up with people that they know. I remember when I started writing a mommy blog, I started writing about postpartum depression. And a lot of people who knew me were really surprised, because of course I would put on the mask. You know, I would get ready to go out to the mommy group, and hair would be done. You know, there's this myth that people with depression are like always in a bathrobe, and you know, now like I brought my A game in terms of makeup and clothes, but I was still really sad and having a hard time. And people would say, you know, it really doesn't seem like that's you, but somehow I could be more honest. And then when you share your story, somehow it gives people permission to share their stories. And so, you know, I had written for a long time. I mean, I started writing obituaries in high school to make extra money.
That's your start, obituaries.
Yeah, it was. I know. I think I got like $25 a person, and it would be, you know, you'd want to go to the mall, and you're kind of like, oh, I feel like I'm almost hoping for a bad thing.
You just never go out of business, right?
Yeah. I felt very conflicted, like, oh, I got these new shoes, but oh man.
It came on,
Yeah, I know, right? You just kind of feel bad. So, I mean, I've always written, and even when I worked in business, I just always wrote on the side and was part of poetry groups. But it was really when I became a blogger and started to share my own story that I think I really understood the power of story and words. And it was reaching out to other moms. And at the time, because my children are older now, you know, people didn't discuss postpartum depression. There weren't celebrities who had it. And it was associated with literally like really sad news stories. And so it was hard to come out with that story. But I did, and you know, I was able to put kind of a normal, typical face on something that people didn't like to talk about, and that seemed to free people to talk about it themselves. And so, really, I've just continued. And so, when I went through my divorce, and you know, I mean, I've had lots of kind of hard things happen. I'd had some dating violence happen, and I thought, if I can write about my pain, then perhaps something good will come out of it because it will help somebody else through theirs. Because I know for me, words have always been such a lifeline. I remember at dark times in my life reading Anne Lamott and Anne Voskamp and knowing that there are other people who are literally on the floor. On the floor of their homes. And again, at the supermarket, when someone says, "How are you?" you don't like, "Well, I just got up off the floor."
Yeah, let me tell you exactly how I'm feeling. Blah.
TMI.
Yeah, TMI. Everyone's like, "Oh, I just was wondering how you're doing, and I'm going to go get the milk." Right? And butter.
It's
right?
the mask, and we see the mask. Whereas it was through reading writers that I loved that I realized that, you know what, everyone does have this kind of secret hard journey inside. And if we start sharing that with each other, it makes it easier. And sometimes I find that as a Christian, there's a bit of a myth that if we're praying correctly and if, you know, we are in God's favor, that somehow only good things will happen to us. And so sometimes I think it's hard to say, all of these lousy things are happening to me, because are people going to say, well, maybe you're just praying wrong, or
But do you feel there was a risk, though? Like sharing yourself, even on here, on a show, there is always a risk of judgment.
Every time.
Somebody shaming you, somebody making judgments about you when they don't know you, and it's scary. Like every time I come to the studio and I'm driving here, I have to work through. There are moments of anxiety and protection that I don't get in my head, that whatever I'm going to say, somebody's going to judge me.
There are some topics that we quiver about as we approach them, and you have all those fears. But what's interesting is the response on the other end is the complete opposite.
Right.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being open. I can relate. You gave me permission. It's so needed. You know?
It is. And in fact, this is a little bit of a kind of full circle moment for Melinda and I, because the story of our meeting was I was literally flipping through channels, and I normally hadn't been a viewer of Christian television, and she was on revealing a story about her own separation and her own brokenness. And I remember stopping and pausing and watching it, because for me this was really groundbreaking that someone was being so revelatory in a very public forum. And so through a weird set of circumstances, we happened to kind of know the same person and ended up in the same town, and I really didn't know anybody else. And Melinda sat with me and prayed with me, and you know, flash forward like, you know, several years, and here I am. So it was through Melinda telling her story that allowed me to tell my story. And there may be somebody out there listening to this right now who is feeling broken and is feeling hurt and is feeling that their life is a mess and almost feels forgotten by God. And so, you know, if we say, hey, me too, I think that sometimes gives people the courage to reach out.
Yeah, the whole me too, right? Like when you, Joanna, when you're speaking, because you do a lot of preaching and speaking, you must find the same thing. As you share the feedback from that, people really respond to it.
Yeah, well, it's through story, and I find through humor too. Like, not to make light of a serious situation, but if you can, like, recently I was talking, you know, like I was talking about wisdom that I did not accept, and like the hilarious story of this adventure that I had recently in a boat and getting caught in a thunderstorm, and because I didn't take advice from someone who knew better than me. And so I'm telling the story in a funny way. And it's a story about myself and like stupid decisions I had made that day. But it's to illustrate a much larger truth that is universal, which it doesn't matter if you're stuck in a boat in the middle of a thunderstorm or you're stuck in a metaphorical, you know, bad decision that you have made that you're stuck in the middle of. But like, how do we get there and how do we get out of it? And so it's the power of these stories, and I find that through humor especially, that's my approach, that when you get someone laughing, you can like punch them with the thing that's true too.
Absolutely. Because they're open and they go.
Well, it's because, like if you come at it directly, people are like, no, that's not me. I don't make unwise decisions. I'm not prideful in my decision making. But if you come at it with a joke or come at it with a story or an illustration, people are like, oh yeah, I do that.
Yeah. Well, and we all have stories, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you can't be like, when you share a story, you can kind of find the places of connection and relatability, right?
Yeah.
Jen, you've said, you mentioned Ann Voskamp, you mentioned Anne Lamott, and you are an avid reader. I know that, and you can quote all kinds of authors and people. But you've mentioned to me, outside of the studio, that one of the books that really, captured you and impacted you was The Broken Way by Ann Voskamp.
Yeah.
Because as much as you're like this, I mean, your mommy blog, blog was huge. It was pioneering. Nobody was into blogs then. You had thousands of people following you. You've written a book that's in universities. Like you are very, very, in a sense, successful and entrepreneurial, as the world sees it.
Right.
But underneath all that, you have been through, like you said, the trauma of, the postpartum depression, divorce, dating violence. Then you were hurt and abused by the church. I mean, and on it goes.
Right.
And it's like, seriously? Like, here's this amazing, fabulous woman, and then you've gone through this. And so The Broken Way has really connected with you.
For me, it was quite revolutionary in that I felt that Ann Voskamp really flipped the notion of suffering on its head. The Broken Way I actually read this summer, and I was supposed to go out to the East Coast, where we have a beautiful ocean house that we were supposed to be in, and I was just supposed to relax. And then my beloved dog died, and then all of the water dried up, and we had no water. And in fact, it was I used to call my blog "Saved by Salt Water," but I've actually changed that to "Dwell on These Things" because salt water was pouring out of our taps.
Wow.
And I'm like, you know what? I don't feel so saved by salt water anymore. And it was, I just thought, this was to be a season of rest after a time of some busyness and some suffering and some hardship. And it just was like, where's God? And I find that, you're always waiting for this booming voice of God. But for me, God speaks to me a lot through books. And so I read Ann Voskamp's The Broken Way. And she just had this beautiful piece, and since I haven't memorized this quote, I'll just read it. But she talks about brokenness. The seed breaks to give us the wheat. The soil breaks to give us the crop. The sky breaks to give us the rain. The wheat breaks to give us the bread, and the bread breaks to give us the feast.
Oh, that's good.
And she really looks at brokenness not as being set aside by God, but as being set apart by God for a season of refinement and strengthening so that you can go on to do great things. And throughout my life, when I've seen parts of brokenness, and I use my writing as a tool to kind of reach out to others, I've always had people reach back to me and say, in you revealing your brokenness, I felt less broken. And for me, Ann Voskamp has that very similar approach, that beauty comes out of our brokenness, that God is with us in our brokenness, that we're held in our brokenness. And that brokenness isn't something to be scared of or to run away from or to hide and pretend it's not happening, but something to lean into and see what is the lesson.
So in the beautiful broken mess, what should we hold on to? What should our mindset be during those times?
I think it's trying to keep some faithfulness in God, and I mean, I actually wore today. It's a mustard seed around me, and it's you know what, you can not even really see it, right? It's so tiny. It looks like a little piece of pepper or something.
Maybe you can hold it up. Maybe we can get.
Yeah, and it's and if you have faith the size of a grain of a mustard seed, then you can do anything. And for me, it's when you're in that mess, kind of tying that knot at the end of your rope and then seeing what the learnings can be. I think often when I've been broken, it's because I feel like God wants me in a quiet season, or He wants changes to happen. And there's always good that comes out of it, but it's years later. It's hindsight that lets you see the good. I mean, when you think of some of His most favored people, Job, Hagar, these are people who really suffered. And years later, I mean, there's a scene when, Hagar's out in the desert and her son is dying, and God comes down and, God's actually there, and He's like, hey, Hagar, what's up? And she's like, well, a lot, actually.
What's up?
Yes.
Yeah. And, he's been there all along. And in the end, Ishmael goes on to form a nation, and and Hagar is redeemed, but it took years.
And see, again, Jen, that's the problem though, because in our society now, it's immediate satisfaction. We demand a good, suffering-free, bad-free life. And when something happens, I've heard this time and time again by friends, God is silent, God is not near. Why is my life so bad? And then I go, but look at the way of Jesus. Look at Jesus' life. His life was not joyous. There were, but how has that come about? Like, I struggle with that because there's a part of me that's like, I want a happy, joyous life. I hate suffering and hurt, though I've been through quite a bit. But what has happened in our culture where people are demanding even in the church, and when it's not there, then they immediately blame God and say, God's silent or he doesn't care about me. What is that? Like, why has that come about?
It's just that instant culture. It's because we can, look up anything on the internet instantly. They're thinking of having drones deliver us our packages so they can arrive the same day. Like, it's this crazy.
Joanna's like, wow.
Can it come? I live in a condo, and I've seen these that they actually drop it right on your balcony. That would be perfect for me. I live right downtown Toronto.
But where have we created this theology? What has happened?
It's wrong teaching, and it's based out of emotionalism and a fleshly desire to never hear the word no, I love something that we had shared in an earlier show. Joanna brought it up. We have no coping mechanisms anymore for disappointment, and therefore God's got to do it. And then also there's, the church has done a small offense of sort of having this ideology of like, just speak it, say it, do it, it's done.
And it's gonna,
And sometimes God says no for our good, for the betterment of our good. And so we were just like, oh, it's hard to reconcile that because sometimes it's like, yes, 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 all the time. But
the concepts of obedience, and people used to fast regularly. If you do a weekend cleanse, people think you're like a hero now. So, that's not really feasting.
To be fair, like suffering, no one has ever liked suffering. This is not new. Our generation somehow weaker than previous. If you look all throughout history, the Bible itself, like people are complaining and complaining and complaining about their suffering. They're a week in the desert and they're already complaining. And like, we shouldn't be so quick to judge because that's us too.
It is.
And I guess like it's human nature. Like we're in a broken and sinful world, and we wanted things that God for our good said you cannot touch. And then we did it anyways. And he's like, there are consequences to this. And that's suffering and the toil of our work and death itself. So there's this thing in us, right, that like knows that suffering isn't actually how it should be. So when we suffer, we're longing for how it should be. But it's not there. Like we're not there yet.
And sometimes the no is part of God's loving. Towards us, and the silence is part of God's loving and care, because I need you to just wait, pause, grow, learn, ground, whatever it is,
Yeah, and I like what they said here, in Voskam, of the breaking. Visually I like that, because if we see that we're broken to then create something, to grow something for the feast, then that can make sense, because the suffering comes where we can have a choice to say, I choose to be a victim, or I choose to grow and make something of this. And it always comes down to this choice. I tell women all the time, you have a choice. It's either this or this. How are you going to live?
And we know too, like studies of people who are in torture or prison camps or these kind of things, the people who survive, it's because they have a hope in something higher than themselves. That it's those who lose their hope and belief that something bigger, not hope that like everything will be okay, like I'm in the middle of a terrible situation and I'll just like magically fix this. But it's like, the classic stories of the studies of people who came out of, prison camps. Or, there's a story recently of a Korean Canadian pastor who spent 2.5 years in North Korean prison, and he talks about like sustaining hope through terrible
His view on that is
like
incredible.
his view of God though was correct. And we have a lot to learn from a guy like that.
So in that, Jen, I know you have a lot. So as you've gone through these trying times, this obviously the breaking has been key. What else has been hopeful for you as you've carried on in your journey?
For me, it's just holding on to what faith really is. And Anne Lamott has this really great quote that she got from her pastor. And he had said, the opposite of faith is not doubt, but certainty. Our faith walk, if we could see it, and if God were joining us at the table, like that would be amazing, but it doesn't work that way. And I think we don't always know why, because we're not supposed to know why.
That's right.
But it's having that faith. And she goes on to say, faith includes noticing the mess, the emptiness and discomfort, and letting it be there until some light returns. And again, in this society of instant, want it, fun, and there are a lot of, wellness movements that promise, if you just kind of focus on it, it'll appear. And like, isn't that amazing? Because wouldn't it be great if life were like a catalog?
And they make a lot of money because people want it.
They so want that.
it.
They
It
so
speaks to our
crave it.
brokenness.
Like, it's not as nice of a sale pitch to say, like, in this world you will have many troubles.
Right.
And you're like, what? I don't want to sign up for that.
I know.
Right? Yeah.
Like Job is your face of marketing. Right? This is just like not really good.
Well, like,
Job's
no, like, how about the execution cross is our brand?
I know. Right?
The most excruciating way to die is our
And that's
brand.
us.
I know.
Join us.
Yeah.
That's
Come
our
with
symbol
us.
of hope, actually.
Yeah, and it is too, right?
Yeah.
It is, and so it's digging in, and for me, it's not waiting for God to come riding down like Santa, fairy godmother, kind of the hero at the end of a chick flick. It's that. It's in people. It's in, Melinda reaching out to me, or it's in, having a random conversation at a supermarket, or, on my drive into the studio. I was listening to a radio program on a woman who has married a widower, and that's my situation now with my second marriage. And, people aren't always thrilled when the new wife comes into town. And she was talking about this, and I thought that's so interesting because those were the words that I needed to hear today. And that's where the God moments come. It's when you're in the car, stuck with the construction signs, and it's this, and thankfully, there was, the little type, because I got to listen to the end of the show.
Yeah.
I always say
That's
God's
a God moment.
always speaking, isn't he?
Yeah.
He is.
It's just whether we choose to
We
listen.
need to tune in. And again, I think because we're used to this kind of, big, Netflix kind of an ending, right? And we miss God, and we miss those God-like moments. And I know for me, I've had lots of times when I've pulled away from the church and away from my own faith, and it's because I'm like, God is not speaking to me. But when I think about how did he speak through the people in the Bible, if you return to Scripture and look at how he treated his favorite people, then you know that that's how he shows himself. It's not instant.
I love that's worth a recap. So once again, so don't walk away from God. Don't leave God. Don't reject God because he's not moving in the way that you want him to, because he's a still small voice, whisper in the wind through a person. He answers in many forms.
He does, and step towards him. It's like when the man is at the pool, and Jesus says to him, do you want to get well? I mean, it seems like kind of a cruel question for this guy who's been laying there for like 30 years.
He's like, duh. Jesus.
He's giving us a clue. Reach out to me. Reach out to me continually. And look for me in other ways.
Yeah, that's good. That is really good. So in this journey of yours, and you've come through the trauma, and you've left the church, you've left even the faith, and you've come back. Jen, what is it about the Christian faith that, I don't want to say to market, but that really has now, you've said, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in 100%. Because there's a lot of people walking the fence, and they don't know, and they're going to test this out and
I
test.
love that question.
And you know what? It can happen.
Yeah.
But for you, because I know there's many people who can relate to you.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's Jesus. I mean, interestingly, I was recovering from eye surgery, which was really kind of messed up, and I couldn't see. And so I was listening to a lot of audiobooks. And just randomly, for some reason, I thought I was actually ordering like this super fun novel. And this like Christian book comes on because they had similar titles. I'm like, what?
I love that.
But
So that's how you get people similar titles.
I'm
Okay.
like, God is speaking to me in this moment. And there was a quote in it. It's a book by Glennon Doyle Melton. And she says that God is like the sun. And the sun is there for you on everybody, whether you're good, you're bad, the sun is there. And you can choose to hide in the dark for as long as you want. But the moment you want to come out into the sunshine, come out into the sunshine and it will be there for you. And for me, that's the promise of Christ. He is, I think, the best example of love, of non-judgment, of acceptance.
Yeah, he's constant, he's sure.
He took the broken, like his disciples, right? This crazy kind of ragtag group of outcasts, and he made them. The church is 2,000 years later and we're still talking about him. There was something in his approach to life that is so revolutionary then in Roman times and now, which sometimes seem like Roman times. And it's still that message of love and forgiveness. And for me, that is simply the way. So that is my return. I just haven't found that sense of love anywhere else.
Can't compare.
That's powerful. And I think that understanding of, receiving his forgiveness, receiving his love, and I think it makes so much sense now, Jen, that you are now able to give that away in your writing, because I just think that it's beautiful. Because sometimes we receive a lot and then we just don't do anything with it. We just take it all in, we love it, we kind of sit in it. But I think the responsibility for us as followers of Jesus is then to share the story, share what we've received from him and what he's given to us to give back to the world. And I think that is tremendous.
That's the call to take down the mask, because there will be someone out there thinking, oh, their lives look perfect. And it's saying to them, you know what, I've experienced brokenness too, and this is what has helped. And I think that that's really one of the most powerful statements that you can make, is to be humbled and to share your story and to say, me too. And walk with me and take strength from Jesus. And I think that's the best thing we can leave people with.
I love it.
It's the best choice. I think that those traumatic experiences, I have seen on the other side, women and men choose the other way. Victim, anger, shame. And it's hard to see them now because you're like, this is your life. You're in a place now where this is your life, and you've been living your life in such darkness now. Let's make some choices. And yet, I'm really encouraged by you because you were like, I could stay there.
Right.
And there's a journey, but there's always a choice.
And I've been there, but it's bitterness or it's betterness.
Right.
Yeah.
And you need to make a choice. And for me, I'm going to draw from these experiences and see where I can show love to others. And days where I feel really awful and like there's nothing that I'm receiving, maybe those are the days I'm supposed to give.
I got to echo what you're saying. I lived a very traumatic life, and people ask me whenever I speak, how did I find God, stay with God? And I said, I clung to him because I chose, it's a decision. I chose to look for him in the midst of what was going on, as opposed to assume automatically that he's not there. But he was there. And so it's really sort of a shift in mindset, isn't it?
It is.
That he's present. He's like the sun, always there.
And it's present, and it's going into scripture and seeing that a lot of people have suffered and suffered for like decades, but he was always there.
Always present.
Always present.
Comfort.
That's
strong
amazing.
power.
Jen, I know that we're going to continue this conversation on our website, because I know that you're going to be writing a few blog posts about your life and your journey and some encouragement. We've been so encouraged about you joining our team in writing, so thank you for that. We haven't really told you that
thank you for the
publicly, but
opportunity.
Thank you for your words on on our site and within the show. So we so appreciate you.
Well, I so appreciate being here today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I love women who are open and transparent, and that's the kind of women we want to be, and we want to encourage our viewers to be the same. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, to our viewers, to you, if you've been through any trauma or disappointment, like Jen, please write to us at hello@seehearlove.com. We want to pray with you. We want to connect with you. We want to help you in any way we can. We'll also send your prayer requests and your needs to Crossroads. They have a 24/7 prayer team that would love to pray for you as well, and we'd love to do that because we want to help you find healing and hope in your suffering today. Well, on that note, thanks for joining us on this Motivational Monday. We will see you again next week. Bye-bye.